It is a Friday. It is, believe it or not, it is Brickyard 400 weekend as well. And I say that only because it is your chance, and we'll give you plenty of opportunities still, to remind you to win $500 by predicting the winner of the Brickyard 400 coming up on Sunday at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I know last night had some Indiana Sprint Week that took place at IMS, but obviously the big focus on the sports world continues here at Grand Park in Westfield, where the Colts are wrapping up the first week of their training camp. And I guess when we look back 5 years from now on training camp 2025, what will be the storylines that we reflect upon from week number one? Well, the good news is that in week one, you get your way through it without like a major and or significant storyline that sets you back and where you just say, whoa, like where are you going to go from here? Obviously yesterday, and I thought it was significant, the story of Bernhard Raimann. And I think, I told you yesterday that sometimes when guys say something, you say to yourself, I feel like this is a story. And I think that happened yesterday with Bernhard Raimann, in the fact that Bernhard Raimann was candid about where things stand, which is not really at this point within vision of one another on his contract status. And the fact that Bernhard Raimann, the left tackle for the Colts, who is entering year number 4, just basically said, look, we are at this point not on the same page. And it seems as though the Colts, we don't know whether or not they value that position. Bernhard Raimann knows exactly what he's saying. He knows that the Colts are aware of the value that he brings at left tackle. And it is some pretty good gamesmanship there. But I noticed yesterday, other people noticed those comments, and it was interesting that Raimann was that forthright. We talked to Alec Pierce the day before, and he was not as candid when it comes to his contractual status and situation. Alec Pierce was a little more coy in that regard. So we'll see what does come of the Raimann situation. Alec Pierce as well, but the precedent would be, when it comes to the Colts, that you kind of wait until the dust settles before you really get into those situations. And we'll see whether or not Chris Ballard, it's either probably going to be just before the year begins or then at the end of the year when they sit down and they figure that out. Last night, Fever in action. Eddie Garrison was on the pre- and post-game. Eddie, I'll be honest, I watched the vast majority of that Fever game, and I thought, to be honest with you, that in like the early third quarter, I thought, surely they're not going through this again, right? This is not going to happen again where they have one of those droughts. But they rebounded nicely. I thought Kelsey Mitchell played really, really well. But a good win last night over Las Vegas for the Fever.
Yeah, nice bounce-back win, Jake. And you mentioned it. They didn't play particularly well in the first half. I didn't feel like their Stephanie White said in our conversation yesterday, I don't know if you texted her, Jake, but Rick Carlisle, when he appeared on the morning show during game days, he was like pretty much undefeated. And now Stephanie White, when she appears on this program, she is undefeated on game days. And during that conversation yesterday, she mentioned about that Las Vegas needs to feel them physically on the defensive side of the floor. Didn't feel like they did that in the first half. Much, much better in the second half. And I have to wonder, I mentioned this last night with Bria Goss, Ari McDonald, who had been a player that was coming off the bench with Caitlin Clark active, she provided a lot of energy and a lot of emotion and a lot of a defensive-minded presence for them. In that first half, she only plays like 8 or 9 minutes. Sydney Colson gets the majority of the point guard minutes. It seemed like she was fresher in that third quarter, and I think she was really what spearheaded that spirited comeback in the third quarter and carried it over to the fourth quarter, because her defensive pressure on the ball was really, really good last night. She forced a couple of steals that generated 2 threes for Indiana, and it was a nice bounce-back win after a game where they played really well for 2.5 quarters on Tuesday against the Liberty.
And the other interesting thing about it, Eddie, when you look at it, it almost was like that Fever game took on what Shane Steichen had talked about with this Colts team, and that is that games can so typically be decided late down the stretch in the NFL, and that's the thing that the Colts want to work on. Fever, obviously, last night, they made shots down the stretch, and those were shots that perhaps have eluded them before as they fell themselves back into the spot of being 500. But a nice win for them last night. We'll talk about that over the course of today. Big show lined up for you on this Friday. Kevin Bowen going to join us as he does usually on Fridays. We'll recap everything that's taken place here at Colts camp. Cam Binham, one of the new members of the Colts and one of the real centerpieces, I think, on what they are hoping for and expecting out of Lou Anarumo's defense, is going to join us. Matter of fact, that conversation will be coming up just a couple of minutes, and we can recap over the course of today some of the things that we saw today at Colts camp. John Oreovitz is going to join us. He's got a new book coming out, 2 o'clock hour, just after our Franciscan Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. Oreo will join the show. But in terms of what did take place today at camp that I've mentioned, Cam Binham going to join us shortly. One of the things that was very important is, again, the all eyes on the quarterback situation. Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones started out in the first. He was your quote-unquote starter in 11 on 11, although you don't read a whole lot into that because they've kind of varied back and forth. But Richardson did show a little more precision, I think, today than we have seen previously, and notably getting Tyler Warren involved with that. So Warren is going to be such a centerpiece of this offense. And Warren is such an important piece, obviously, just in terms of when you are investing a first-round pick, you want to see almost immediate production. And today, the first time I think that you started to see that in terms of that intermediary area. And that is so important for Richardson because, like I always say, when you play 21 or horse or basketball in your driveway, in order to be able to kind of get the feel for three-point or mid-range shooting, you start going in and hitting layups and doing those things that then get you warmed up for the areas that become a better feel for you in your mid-range. And I think for Richardson, that's what you need to do with a guy like a Tyler Warren, and just in terms of a rhythm passer and a target that is there right over the middle to get you in rhythm, and then that opens everything up in terms of accuracy, because when you are a career sub-500 passer, you absolutely need to do everything you can to facilitate and help out with and make things better for your passing. And so Tyler Warren, an important piece of that. The Colts started to infiltrate that a little more today. Also, Zaire Franklin was out on the field today and moving around. He is coming off of that ankle injury. There was some question whether or not he would start out on the PUP list, and Zaire Franklin was out moving around today for a bit in practice in mobile. That's good. So this is a year where we have seen years where the Colts have started out with players a lot on the PUP. This is not going to be one of them, the physically unable to perform list, because Franklin was the one that was a question of that, and he was out there today. So that is good news for certain. But one of the players that we have talked about, we've talked about a lot in terms of new faces for the Colts, new angles for the Colts. We talked yesterday with Matt Taylor. I thought a really good explanation from Matt just about, man press coverage versus a zone coverage, and the fact that this defense with Lou Anarumo is one that kind of disguises both. It's a defense that wants to present to quarterbacks, and the way that it thrives is giving the look of a Jekyll and then performing the look of a Hyde, or vice versa, and keeping the offense guessing as to whether or not it's necessarily even a man coverage, or even dropping back into a zone or a cover two. And I understand and respect that not everybody knows what all of that lingo means, but basically what it means is, are you presenting that you defensively are going to do and allow differently than what you actually are once the ball is snapped? And one of the guys that is a key, I think, in all of that, he actually had a similar situation with that in Minnesota, where he comes from, in terms of defenses that run kind of that disguise, if you will. Cam Binham, one of the big offseason acquisitions, joining us here at Grand Park in Westfield. So, Cam, first off, let's get right to this, and that is, you were one of the big offseason acquisitions. I just talked about it. Welcome to Indianapolis. Do you already feel like you're a Colt? It's only been a week, let's be honest.
Yes, I do.
Some OTAs, right?
Yeah, OTAs made it feel like I was a Colt. Just getting here, being able to meet the guys and be able to, just be in the facility, being around other people, and just being able to meet the staff and just meeting everybody made me feel at home, because they welcomed me with open arms. Nobody was, everybody was just super welcoming and super cool about me being a new guy, to the point where I only felt like a new guy for a couple of days. And once I started to, familiarize myself, especially with the DBs, then start to grow with the defense and start to meet some guys on the offense, then it feels like a family at this point.
I'm curious of this. I was just talking about this defense, and we don't really know yet. You guys obviously do. We do not yet know exactly how this defense is going to look when you have a new coordinator. But theoretically, on paper, it is a defense that is similar to what you had under Flores in Minnesota, in the fact of kind of keeping people guessing, right?
Right.
And presenting different looks than what you're actually executing.
Yes.
How much of that, I guess, first off, is from what you've seen so far, how much of this feels like advantage for you because it's similar to what you ran in Minnesota? I
would just say, before anything, right now, we're super basic with everything, so we haven't even progressed into the tricky stuff. We're still disguising just natural instincts, but it's still pretty vanilla. It's only day 3 of training camp, but just talking to Coach Lou and just getting to know his mindset and getting to, just hear him talk and watching film of the Bengals in the past years, I see exactly why people would say it's similar, and I feel like it's very similar. And I think for me, that's an advantage too, because just knowing that, the foundation that I have from Coach Flores, just being able to mix so many things up and every single person having to know every single position on the field, I think we can implement that to just have, one of the smartest defenses in the league. And when everybody gets to understand that we can mix this defense up if everybody learns how to play each spot on the defense, and that can be a big plus, because quarterbacks will never have a clue who's where and why are they there, and we're doing different things out of the same look.
So you're still working on long division, but you have yet to get into algebra.
Exactly. Yep, we're still adding, subtracting right now.
When do you guys, or when would you anticipate that takes place? Maybe it's different from franchise to franchise, so it's hard for you to know, but typically speaking, you'd like to kind of have a real feel for what you're going to be when.
Yeah, I'd probably say around 2.5 weeks of training camp. Once you get all the installs and all the play calls are in, then you can start throwing some more spice on each play call. So I think just going through it right now, we're only on install 3 because it's our 3rd day. So we put in a good amount of coverages, but we know based off of OTAs, we're introduced to a lot of different things. So we haven't even touched the red zone yet. We haven't even touched 2-minute yet. So different situations. Once we hammer all those in, then we can add some more stuff on top of it. So but once we have the foundation, everything else is easy. So you can put something in an hour before practice and we'd be able to run it. And that's really just the type of guys that we have on this team, a bunch of smart guys and a bunch of people that care and that have a good understanding of football and good football IQ, to the point where once we have our foundation, like I said, everything else we can add to it and it'd be effortless.
What intrigues you about Indianapolis, about the Colts in general, this franchise and this roster?
Just the history. I think just going back, just it being the franchise that it is, getting to hear about the Irsay family and how big they were to the community. Somebody has my jersey on over there. Hey, that's the first one. Hold on. Shout out to the fans. I'm going to sign it. You stay here. I'm going to sign it for you after this interview.
That's impressive,
That's super cool. Yeah, so like that, just the fans. I haven't played a snap in a real game as a Colt, but we have people walking around here with my jersey on, so that's big. So just being able to, understand the culture out here and seeing people, just how hard they ride for the Colts, and that's something I want to be a part of. And I heard the stadium is rocking too.
How many of these guys did you know?
I'd say 3. Maybe a little more, just off the top of my head. Shegu, Daniel Scott, Daniel Jones from last season with the Vikings. But I've known about a lot of people and have met some other people too in the past. But personally, only 3 people so far.
So you have seen Daniel Jones, obviously, both, in scrimmage settings, in video rooms, whatever it may
be.
What have you seen from Anthony Richardson that is the same or different than what you have seen from Daniel Jones?
It's hard to tell, only day 3. But one thing I know, they're both really mobile quarterbacks, and that's one thing that opens up an offense and that they're both capable of. Obviously, we know both quarterbacks are capable of being a dual threat, and especially with AR. I've seen him going against the Colts last year, watching him on film. Obviously, Joe Flacco started against us, but being able to watch the film and see what he was capable of with his legs and his arm strength. And same with Daniel Jones, being able to do the same thing and me be able to go against him the years he was in New York. He beat us in the playoffs, so that's always a forever rivalry in my mind because he knocked us out in 2022. But just both quarterbacks are really capable of doing really good things.
We're at Colts camp here, Grand Park in Westfield. Cam Binham is the guest. Okay, Cam, actually, you ever thought about when your playing career's over, and let's say it's 15 years from now, right? We're going to be, but are you going to go into broadcasting? Because you're kind of a natural on the microphone.
Really?
Yeah,
that means a lot. I appreciate that. If I'd want to be a guest star, I don't know if I could do it every single day and talk. I'm not I'm a talker. I'm a people person, but I might burn out if I have to talk on TV every single day.
So are you saying, because I've got to talk for 3 hours a day, are you actually saying indirectly that there is some challenge in your job is challenging? You're actually saying that my job has some challenges to it, right?
Your job is probably harder than mine.
I like that.
Because you have to talk about what we're doing every day. Even if it's a boring day, you have to make stuff up to make it sound interesting. If we came out here and just did a walkthrough, you'd have to somehow find a way to make it sound good on the radio.
You are wise beyond your years, my friend. You're wise beyond your years.
So that's a tough job.
Well, I'll tell you what's a tough job for you, and that is playing in this heat and this humidity. But you're used to it because you spend the off seasons in the Philippines. It's a place and an area of the world that's become special to you by spreading the message of football also in that area.
Yep.
But take me through just what the Philippines means for you, and maybe even what you can learn about yourself by being on the other side of the world from everything that previously was familiar.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the people and just the culture out there of how loving, and, it's really a culture. The culture is deep as far as like being a people person. Everybody's looking out for each other out there. Your neighbors know each other. Everybody's always hanging outside. So it's kind of like how life used to be, where everybody's, you're in a neighborhood, but all the kids are playing outside still, and people are just there for each other. And I feel like in America, I love it here just as much. But for me, I feel like we've lost the community aspect in certain ways, just because our lives are so fast, which is a blessing because we have really good jobs and everything, and everybody's so busy out here. But out there, that's when I love to just sit back and relax. And when I have a busy football season, being around so many people, I love to be in the Philippines and have a humble living and be able to live amongst people that maybe not have as much as me, but are enjoying life even more and more grateful in life than me. So I think that's really what I learned the most, of just being grateful and being just so hardworking. People out there are super hardworking to the point where they may not have much, but they're never complaining. And that's something that changed me my first time traveling out there. I came back here and I'm like, I can never complain about anything ever again. And just being able to spread football out there, be able to serve people in poverty, just doing all those things makes me really help me never take the game for granted, because I'm out there, I'm doing a workout on the side, and I invite people out. We have 100 people just to get a lift in, or just to get some field work in, just simply because there's an NFL player out there. And so when I come back here, I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go play football 10 times more, because when I'm in the Philippines, people are itching for an opportunity to play. They're renting fields at midnight to get some field time to be able to put some flag football games on. So just all those things make me just so much more grateful when I'm here. So being able to do half and half just helps me to, put everything in the football season. Then when I'm in the off season, be able to put everything into the people out there in the Philippines.
Did it change a little bit your perspective, or add to the perspective of, in order for where we need to get, you got to have the basics. You got to have the camaraderie, and you've got to have – so in other words, in the Philippines, if it's about family and it's about community, that then parlays hopefully into then building a neighborhood, building what you want and what you need. Have you tried to spread that to your new teammates here of, look, we got to be together first.
Right.
Then we'll see what happens when other things come our way.
Yeah, I think just doing it by example. I'm not here telling stories about the Philippines and say, guys, yeah, look, when I was in the Philippines, I was doing this. It's really just the mindset that I have when I'm around the guys, trying to talk to people, get to know them, especially with the young guys, asking about their story, how they got here, what they think about the NFL so far. So really just being able to talk to people and get to actually know people, I think that's the most important thing. Then also just the enjoyment that we have when we're on the field. Like I mentioned, people out there are so grateful just to be able to play flag football and just to learn. So when we're out here in practice, I try and make sure that I'm having fun no matter what. If it's a hard day, hot day like today, when, it's our third day of practice, so bodies may be a little fatigued, but I'm still out there trying to have fun, trying to spread good energy to be able to pick the mindset up and to pick the energy up on the whole team.
As a safety, do you have to kind of be the quarterback of the defense? I know that linebacker always kind of gets that assignment, but how important is it for you to immediately, are you the most important one to recognize what you think the offense is about to do?
Yeah, I think I would say so, because I'm the furthest guy back, so I have to see the whole offensive formation. So if I see something right or wrong, whatever I say, everybody has to do. I know the linebacker has the green dot, so he's getting the play calls, but as safeties, we're in charge of making the checks and being able to, if there's a motion, I have to adjust off of that. So everything that I'm seeing from back there being a safety, I have to echo it to the linebacker, to the corners, and then the linebackers will get that to the D-line, and everything can change. So I think that's the most important thing, being a safety, being a good communicator.
Do you prefer, when you are lined up in that situation, that everybody is lined up in terms of a man coverage, or would you rather it be that everybody is in a zone coverage and you've got kind of a wider array that people are having to cover?
I like the zone just because I think it's tougher on quarterbacks. I think if we just line up in man, it's telling the quarterback, this is what we're in, you guys figure out a way to beat us, and that's simple. There's a million man beaters in the world, but if we can still play man out of a zone look, we can still play zone out of a zone look, just being able to mix things up. But I prefer us being able to look like we're, just chilling in a zone And if we're going aggressive, we're bringing some heat and going into man coverage, we can drop into it late. But in my opinion, I would never want to show a quarterback what we're doing from the jump.
That's the voice of Cam Binham, by the way, new member of the Indianapolis Colts, 4-year contract playing at the safety position. I did notice, by the way, you went to a high school that's produced like 1,000 NFL players,
yes,
right?
Sir.
What was the name of your high school?
Corona Centennial High School in Corona, California.
Okay, now, you also went to high school with, and I don't know, this. I could be totally off here. The Pacers about 5 or 6 years ago had a center they took out of UCLA.
Yes.
Ike was his first name.
Yes.
Everybody just called him Ike because he had a tricky last name. But he was here for 2 or 3 years. I think he was your graduating class,
Yes, 2016. We were in Spanish class together.
Were you guys close?
We were really cool.
Did you talk to him once you came to Indianapolis about his experience in Indy, or have you not talked to him?
No, because I completely forgot he played with the Pacers. Now that you're letting me know that, I completely forgot. That was a while ago, too.
Unfortunately, I think there are a lot of Pacer fans that completely forgot he played for the Pacers, right? But he was
a
year at UCLA and then drafted here.
Yeah, that's why it feels like so long ago, because I had to do 5 years in college. What did he do, 1 year?
Yeah,
1 year and went pro, so it's super cool just the fact that he was able to do that. But, yeah, we're producing basketball and football players. We got Jared McCain. He just got drafted from my high school. Him, a lot of people.
A ton of guys, right? A ton of guys. Now, lastly, how much of the Spanish do you remember? Be honest.
A good amount when I'm listening to it. I probably can't speak it much anymore, but I can understand when I'm listening, actually. That was one of the weird subjects I was really good at, Spanish.
Now, do you speak, and pardon my naivete here, what is the native
Tagalog.
language in the Philippines?
Tagalog. Tagalog.
Are you fluent?
No, but I'm about 30-40% there. So I can understand.
So when you're over there, though, you're having to speak it, right? Or is English obviously?
I'm learning.
English
Everybody speaks English there. So it's annoying when I'm trying to practice and I speak to somebody in Tagalog. They speak to me in English back. So I'm like, you're not helping me here.
Right.
But it's cool being able to learn. My wife, she speaks 3 languages, 2 Filipino languages, and then obviously English. So she's helping me a lot. But just being out there, for sure, I'm absorbing stuff. And I have a cousin, my nephew. I'm trying to teach him English, and he's teaching me. So it's kind of like, as I'm teaching him English, he's teaching me their language.
Here's my last thing. I have a weird thing, and people listening to this show know this. I love mascots. I like the outfits of mascots. I like the zaniness of mascots. I like all of it. I went 3 years in a row with IndyCar. We were out there during the time that Cal was playing games, and I went to Cal games, and I met the Golden Bear. That's a terrible mascot.
Yeah, he's kind of creepy.
He's creepy. He's very creepy.
Yeah.
And it also looks like, not like the Chuck E. Cheese that got arrested yesterday in Florida, not that level of creepy.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's brutal, right? Like they couldn't wait, right?
Or
like let
take the helmet off at least.
Take the helmet off. But the Cal Golden Bear guy, though, looks like they bought it at a garage sale in 1938, right?
Yeah, they went too traditional by keeping it the same as it was back then.
I think that's your responsibility. Your responsibility now as the alum in the NFL is to get a new Golden Bear outfit.
I got you. Because he does no cool things. Like Blue, he has like a trademark, the dance that he does. Our mascot at Cal just walks around with his hands behind his back.
He's like a creepy uncle,
that's
right?
Scary,
yeah,
exactly.
That is scary is the right way of saying it. And a lot of offenses hopefully will find it scary when they look to see what sort of a junk that the Colts defense is throwing at them. Cam Binham, the new member that will be quarterbacking, if you will, that as part of Lou Anarumo's scheme. Cam, it is a pleasure to have you, man. Welcome to Indianapolis.
Sir. Thank you for
having me. We'd love to have
me.
you back on the show. I held the fan long enough. We'll let you go and sign your jersey.
Sign the first Colts jersey
here.
I've seen
Appreciate
at Colts practice. Thank you.
Cam Binham here on Colts practice. It is a Friday, Grand Park in Westfield, where you'll find us, Query and Company on the Fan. Now, how about that for Superman and the phone booth, Eddie? I'm pretty proud of myself.
Really? Are you now?
Are you not?
I never doubted you.
So I will give a glimpse behind the curtain because I actually believe in total transparency on this radio station. Okay?
So do I.
And on this radio show, I should say.
You missed me so much that you decided that you needed to bust your hiney
That's correct.
downtown
That's correct.
after you got off the air there with Cam Binham?
So the Colts practices end at 11 a.m. And I'm telling you what, today was hotter than the last two. And the Colts have been fabulous so far. Thank you to Matt Conti and the Colts PR staff for providing us different interviews to do and conduct at the end of each practice. We had obviously Alec Pierce day one. I thought he was great. We had Bernard Ryman yesterday, made some waves, as I mentioned, even from a national standpoint about his contract situation. And then Cam Binham might have been the best of the three just in terms of being loquacious and fun, engaging, and also knowledgeable, obviously, about the game and just life in general. But knowing that it is going to be dangerously warm today, and honestly, please be careful if you're out and about because it is already bad, and it's going to be a lot worse here in the next hour or two. And this is something I was not going to mention, but I will now because I think it merits mentioning just because of the reason why now I just came all the way back here. So I had, partially because I miss you, Eddie, that is true. But once we're done with the interviews that we conduct just before the show begins, so those interviews that you hear, we obviously are doing it right as practice ends. I think most people know that.
Clipping that off and saving it as a testimonial.
That's there you go. So we conduct those interviews. So last night I said, you know what? Would it be possible for me to just tape that first segment, including the interview with whatever player we do, and then immediately leave Grand Park and come back downtown? And so thank you to, Lee, who we work with on the digital side, and Cam, who we work with from the side of engineering, and then Todd Meyer for coordinating it, and Eddie, you also for putting that together, the wizardry of it. As soon as I was done interviewing and recording that interview with Cam Binham at about 11:40, I got in the car and drove from Grand Park back down here. And part of the reason for that, I'm sure no one cares of this, but I'm going to mention it anyway. I don't think that my dad would have a problem with me mentioning this because my mom, I believe, put this on social media. But my dad, on Sunday evening, my dad had a stroke. And so my dad's 84 years old. Fortunately, my mom was a hero and immediately noticed that something was off and immediately called 911 because she was trying to get him up off of the couch. And he was saying to my mom, look, I need your help here. He had laid down to take a nap on the couch there watching the Cubs game. And then he just, she said, well, he said, like, wake me up at 6 or something. It was 7 o'clock. And so when she went to wake him up, he said, you've got to help me out here, or, I need help. And my mom realized then that he was basically a dead weight. He was not, his body was not moving and assisting to get up. So she called 911. They immediately came. I think they recognized that my father had something beyond just a dehydration. So he was taken to the hospital. They determined that he had a neurological, not a cardiovascular, but a neurological stroke. So basically a clot within the brain. I'm at the brain stem. He was very, understandably so, just kind of confused on Monday notably. The good news is this. I think at this point my dad is beyond the situation of it being life-threatening. Life-altering, perhaps. And he is in good spirits. He is now getting his strength back. He knows where, he's pretty lucid. I mean, matter of fact, I went yesterday to see him, and the first thing he said when I walked in was, hey, so which quarterback are they starting? Which one was getting the starting reps? So, but the challenge in situations like that is you can have a good moment and then, a tougher one and then back to a good one. So I say all of that only because you want to privately keep
family things private. You know what I mean? I get that. But at the same time, I just have always felt like there's this responsibility, and I know my dad would say the same thing, of you have a unique opportunity and platform to utilize the microphone that we have, not for ourselves, but to just continue to make people aware of things that not only are the most important, but also that you can learn from. And I think once again, as I've learned over the last couple of years, reading and listening to your body or that of your loved ones and getting attention immediately for it. And, you know, my dad's probably a lot like me in the fact that, you know, we love attention. So, you know, making that call to 911 and getting to professionals immediately and first and foremost is such a critically important step because, and my parents' neighbor, Amy, is a saint as well because immediately was on it of what do you need from your mom's standpoint, what can I do to help her? I mean, this town and the reason I love this city is because there is this, and we all have it within the pockets of this city that we live, but we look out for each other in this town. And I've lived places where I don't know that that's the case. And, you know, every single person that within our bubble, as people have found out, you know, that my dad's situation, people reach out, people do what they can, people help out. And we are very fortunate, my sisters and my mom and I and Shannon, that at this point for my dad, it's just a matter of getting strength back and getting back and you know, trying to strive back to the point where everything is back to that 100%. But admittedly and selfishly speaking, part of the reason why I wanted to be back here in studio is because I wanted to be closer to that net. I wanted to be closer to where that is happening. And even though I don't think it's because I'm expecting some sort of a phone call, we are not at this point, thank goodness, and by the grace of God and the actions of a lot of heroes. But you just, when things like that happen, you just want to feel like you're close to it. And you want to feel like you're not too far away, and that rubber band, when it expands out, is not like you're stretching it too thin where you're not going to be able to bounce right back to where you need to be. So thank you to everybody who worked hard in making it possible for me to be where I need to be. And we go from there. There is still plenty to talk about, including, I thought about this on that. Yesterday, as I was, you know, I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, you know, Hulk Hogan passed away. And my dad's like, well, didn't Ozzy Osbourne pass away? And then, you know, one of the first conversations we as a family had where we knew that he was getting his lucidity back was in recalling moments from The Cosby Show and Malcolm Jamal Warner. And I did find something interesting in terms of the confluence of those three and the legacy of the three of them, which I'll share with you the weird brain dropping that I had at like 3:38 in the morning last night, because I can tell you, been running around fairly often lately and not as much sleep. But we'll get into that, and we will get into also what Colts on the practice field have jumped out and made a little bit of a difference, or maybe those that we wait to see what we might be able to get things going. Kevin Bowen will have a lot to say about that conversation coming up. He's going to join us 1 o'clock today, Friday edition, Query & Company on the Fan. Look at Eddie spinning the Kiss hits, right?
You have a problem with that?
No, it's interesting. It's a perfect segue, and I'll tell you why. Kevin Bowen joining us 13 minutes from now. Thank you to those who offered their wishes regarding my dad. And I mean that sincerely. The Gene Simmons, as a matter of fact, when I was a kid, I was convinced that I had convinced the kids on the street that my dad was Gene Simmons. My sister had the Kiss Alive 2 album, and I had this horrifically terrifying image of Gene Simmons with the blood. And I told them that my dad actually was Gene Simmons, and he had makeup upstairs. I showed them my mom's makeup, and I actually thought that kids believed me. So I had kind of a wild imagination with that stuff. But I thought this interesting. And follow me here, because maybe what I'm about to say makes no sense, but in my neuroticism, it made sense when I thought of it. In the last week, we've seen 3, I think, really significant pop culture icons. We've lost 3 of them. And I'm trying to remember the order, but I think it was Malcolm Jamal Warner, then Ozzy Osbourne, and then Hulk Hogan. But what I think is interesting is Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne, to me, have something very in common in the fact that they burst onto the scene as this, not unlike Gene Simmons that we just heard from there, but both of those two burst onto the scene with this larger-than-life persona that was a little bit scary and was rooted in, to an extent, in Ozzy's case, I'll say an angst, for lack of a better phrase, but an intimidation factor, a control of the moment factor, and portraying an image and a character. Ozzy Osbourne, who, by the way, I believe his name actually is John Michael Osbourne. I'm sure JMV knows this, probably has mentioned that. But Ozzy Osbourne, bark at the moon like the occult and this creepy, John and I talked about it on the day that Ozzy passed. When you were a kid, you were like afraid of the album covers. You were terrified of it, right? It was, oh my gosh, like what in the world? It was literally like Scream in the Dark to put to music. And Hulk Hogan was obviously, Terry Bollea, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, but, the character of Hulk Hogan was this, thunder lips and like angry and the 24-inch python arms and, that's right, brother, and ripping his shirt. And, I mean, his massive Hulk, right? And the wrestling aspect of it, they were playing and portraying characters. And it was then via reality television that both of them gave us glimpse into the real persona that allowed them to transition from the character that they had portrayed and set an image, and it was the reality of television that let us know who they really were. In the case of Hulk Hogan, it went obviously a little bit too far, and there were some negatives that came from that. But in the initial years of him as, with his daughter and being kind of a dad knows best guy and whatever else, and you just saw the empire that he was in charge of, and it gave him a relatability. And in Ozzy Osbourne's case, in, little things of trying to figure out how to play the radio in his house and his kids and dealing with, the relationship with which was a loving one with his wife, you saw the reality of who he was as a person versus the persona. And there was a relatability there. And I found it interesting because the first of those was Malcolm Jamal Warner, who we actually knew first as the character that made it relatable to us as family. The other two, it was the second character that they were, and I'm using character in air quotes, it was the second version of themselves that was the real version that we got to know that made them relatable. In Malcolm Jamal Warner's case, it was the character that he played that made him relatable, not the reality. We didn't know the reality of who Malcolm Jamal Warner was. We only knew him as Theo Huxtable. And as Theo Huxtable, Malcolm Jamal Warner represented suburban teenage kid, middle to upper middle class teenage kid to everyone. And there was an importance in that because he was relatable to white suburban America as an African-American guy. And yet, African-American kids loved him too, even though he was being portrayed of living in by most stereotype, fair or unfair, like the white world to some extent. But Malcolm Jamal Warner is one that we didn't know as well because we thought we knew him based on the fictional character of who he was. And then everything that we saw after that, we were comparing to Theo Huxtable. It was like Theo Huxtable was his reality. And yes, he went on to do some very, very good things and was in some very good roles. And by all account, was exactly who we were hoping Theo Huxtable was with it. And it is terribly sad the way that Malcolm Jamal Warner passed because it was a family vacation and he was swimming with his daughter. I mean, terribly, terribly sad. But I did think it was interesting that you had the alternate timeline of the way that we got to know the real version of those three individuals. And Ozzy and Hulk Hogan, I think, reality television is one, and I think a lot of people forget this as well. There was a writer's strike for television in the, I want to say, late 90s or into the 2000s, and that was the birth, to a great extent, of reality television. It wasn't just because MTV had come up with The Real World and people wanted to see what they could do with that. That writer's strike led to, we've got to come up with content. And we don't have writers anymore to write the television sitcoms that we were planning on doing. So let's just do reality television and just find people and have a camera follow them around. And it let us get to know Ozzy Osbourne. It let us get to know Hulk Hogan. It let us get to know the Kardashians too, I guess, for that matter. Well, which Kardashian's your favorite, Eddie?
Oh, really? I don't know. The only one I know is Kim.
Oh, come on.
And Chloe.
Okay. Keep going. Yeah, see?
I don't know. That's all I got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
That's all I got.
Courtney?
Yeah, Courtney.
What about the Kylie Jenner? She's also a Kardashian.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
See, there you go.
There's Kendall.
Kendall, there. Okay, see? Yeah, now all of a sudden, we tap into the truth here. We know what you're watching. It's like me saying that I don't know which The Real Housewives of Orange County. I know every one of them. Partially because I'm forced to watch it for like an hour and a half a night, and every time it's on to Shannon, I'm like, can we change the channel? No, hold on just a second. They're getting ready to get in a big argument here, and we got to watch it. And then I'm like, 20 minutes later, I'm like, when is this big argument? She's like, well, it's coming up. I'm like, how do you know that? She's like, well, I watched this yesterday. What?
Is it Kylie that's dating Timothy Chalamet?
I always get Kylie, and you said there's a Kendall, right?
Kendall and Kylie, yes.
I think it's Kylie.
And
she's the one
twins.
that was here for the playoffs, right?
Yeah. Whichever one's dating Timothy Chalamet.
Okay, one of them, and I think it was Kourtney Kardashian, and then the mom, Jenner, Kris Jenner, is that her name?
Yeah.
They were at the Indy 500 in 2000, I'm guesstimating here.
Kylie.
2009, maybe 2008, 2009. Kim Kardashian was part of like a diet program that was on, I think, Graham Rahal's car, and as a result of that, it was Kris Jenner and one of the Kardashian girls were in the garage area on the morning of the 500, and I was standing right next to them as they were bringing a car through, and they were looking at the car, and believe it or not, people hadn't figured out yet like who exactly it was. This was right kind of at Kim was the famous Kardashian because of the tape that Eddie never saw, and then the others weren't as famous yet. But I will say, they were extremely nice. They were very nice, and they were very, respectful of the 500, and they were kind of in awe of all of it, and they were actually pretty down to earth, pretty nice. I mean, I was there for 10 or 15 minutes around them, and they asked a couple questions, whatever. They were actually very nice. But nonetheless, people say that obviously celebrity passings come in three. I know Chuck Mangione passed away yesterday. But Malcolm Jamal Warner, Ozzy Osbourne, Hulk Hogan, three giants this week for sure within pop culture. Somebody asked me a great Colts question, and I don't know the answer because I got to practice late. Kevin Bowen was there and has been there from the get-go, and I will ask him the question in terms of one player that we need an introduction on. Even though we've known his name for a while, we don't know much about him. I'll explain next. So the Colts camp now, excuse me, is now into, let's see, day 4? Is that right? Day 3. Kind of all runs together at this point for me, I'll be honest with you. But day 3, and I find it interesting, although I'm not making flippant comment about the fact that there were a handful of veterans that got off day 2 in terms of a rest day. Just take it off, rest day, load management. But one of those players, Kevin Bowen, joining us now, who has been out there and covering extensively Colts camp. You can read, of course, all of his work at 1075thefan.com. You hear him in the morning along with James Boyd for the Fan Morning Show. They have been out there covering it with each and every snap and every play that's taken place. One player, Kevin, somebody asked me about, and I said, you know what, I'm going to ask Kevin because it's not named Anthony Richardson. It's not named Cam Binham. It's not named Tyler Warren. It's not named Jonathan Taylor, who was the big talk of camp, obviously, in the past. But Jelani Woods. Jelani Woods, to me, is a fascinating player because he has not been available for health purposes, but the Colts have never wavered from him. So clearly they see something that they find to be worth the wait. What can you tell me about Jelani Woods so far in camp?
Yeah, he had a sighting or two yesterday, a 7-on-7 rep. He caught, I want to say 1, maybe even 2 balls there, one from Daniel Jones down the seam. So, yeah, I mean, he's been available, which I don't say that, as a shot. I mean, unfortunately, that's been a major question for him. I just don't see how he makes the team. I think the 4 tight ends are pretty obvious. Tyler Warren, Mo Alley-Cox, Will Mallory, and Drew Ogletree. So, I don't know. If he showed a flash, maybe you put him on the practice squad. You've waited this long with him. You might as well, try to reap the benefits if he's going to hit that. But, yeah, I would find it hard for him to make the 53-man roster.
I guess the question I would have then would be this, Kevin, and that is, if once Jelani Woods is healthy, he doesn't look like one that's going to crack the rotation, then why did you hold on to him for as long as you did through the injuries?
Well, if he were to look really, really good, then obviously you would put him above whatever, Ogletree, Mallory, Mo Alley-Cox, somebody like that. So I think you're kind of holding out for, all right, if he, that rookie flash that he had, he was a 3rd-round pick. If he sniffs getting back to that level, that's why you would have him. And then, again, practice squad rules, you can hide guys on the practice squad. So, 90-man roster, it's not like he's taking some guy's spot and, you're really doing a disservice to your team by having him around. So I think it's just simply get him through this rookie contract, let him have a healthy offseason, see if he can sniff any of that. And if he does, you keep him around. If not, which, again, right now I would say it's a no, then you move on.
Okay, biggest storyline of this camp so far is?
Oh, well, I mean, Scott's quarterback. The quarterback.
Still, okay, let me back that up. I'm sorry. Of the things that have happened on the field so far that were not anticipated, I guess I should have said it that way, is there anything that, that you did not think on Monday when you woke up and you knew it was going to be the week of camp was going to be something you're talking about, but it's percolated and popped up, good or bad, and you're like, okay, there's a story that was not anticipated?
Well, I'll go away from quarterbacks in just a second, but I will start there. I did not, when we talked last Friday, Jake, I'm sure we discussed Anthony Richardson back throwing, and my question for you was, okay, when does 50-50 split occur? When does this competition start back up? When do we really get, back and forth Richardson-Jones? I didn't think it was a guarantee we'd have it here on day 3, but we had it on day 1 and day 2 and day 3. So, that is something that, I didn't think it was a slam dunk at the start of the week. And, so far, assuming Daniel Jones flips with Richardson tomorrow, it will be exactly a 50-50 split through the first 4 days of camp. So that is something new. And I think, again, it's been a real competition. I don't know how high quality of a competition it's been, but it's at least been real. Defensively, you got to go with Justin Wally, the corner out of Minnesota. I mean, he seems to be a legit guy for them, at least as a rookie and someone they trust. Will that be the case in a month? We'll see, but not many 3rd-round rookies walk into camp with a starting spot, especially at a position group that I thought you had enough kind of internally to where you didn't need to put him in the starting lineup. And I think that defense, I think if anybody that's been out at Grand Park, they will have seen, a lot of disruption from that secondary. knocking balls away, creating contested catches, and frankly just making it difficult for Colts pass catchers to come down with the ball. So, yeah, I'd say Justin Wally there, and in general the defense.
Kevin, let me give you a statement, and you tell me if you agree with it, okay? And I'll preface it by saying I thought, and I still think, that when the season begins, Daniel Jones is going to be the starting quarterback of the Colts, okay? But with that said, let me give you a statement, and then you tell me, Kevin Bowen, if you think there's any accuracy to it, okay? Daniel Jones cannot win the starting job for the Indianapolis Colts. He simply has to wait until Anthony Richardson loses it.
I certainly understand the question. I don't think it's there. I think they're very open to if Anthony Richardson continues to look like the quarterback that he has and shows no improvement, and Daniel Jones offers, drop me in the middle of the lake and stay afloat for a few minutes, they'll go with Jones. I don't think it's like we feel like it's got to be Anthony Richardson and he's got this secure, padlock on the starting job. No, I don't really view it in that light. I mean, again, if you're going to hold Shane Steichen accountable to his words, the words he uses the most, or the word I should say he uses the most, is consistency to evaluate the QB. Well, that's definitely Daniel Jones more than it's Anthony Richardson. Now, today I thought Richardson easily had his best day at camp. It's a pretty low bar, but I thought it was easily the best day he's had. I thought he probably was better than Jones. But, yeah, I actually do think it's like, coming into camp I thought Jones had the slight lead, but I do think we're getting into a little back and forth of the 50-50. I still come back to Steichen's word of consistency, and the Giants didn't support Jones at all, and if we feel like we've got an above-average defense and good enough pass catchers and a decent O-line, then we just need to do this, not going to turn the ball over. Well, I mean, so far, Jones, I don't think in 11 on 11's had a single interception. So, is that something you would opt for?
Is Jones a base hit guy? Like, is Jones Wade Boggs and Richardson is Adam Dunn? You're so captivated by the home runs that you kind of overlook the fall down strikeouts, but yet Wade Boggs just goes out and gets a hit every third time, and that's kind of who Daniel Jones is. Nothing wows you, but that's who he is.
Yeah, I could not agree more on the Adam Dunn, Anthony Richardson. Wade Boggs seems like quite the compliment to Daniel Jones. I was thinking like Mickey Morandini.
Yeah, Jerome Walton.
Yeah.
Mickey Morandini's a good one. That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your pinch hitter in October 22nd of the 8th inning that you're like, oh, this guy got a hit back in, mid-August. Maybe he'll come up clutch at this time. So,
Dane Orge. They've got Dane Orge at quarterback, yes.
Yeah, I certainly understand where you're going with that analogy. And it's weird, Jay, because I do think the Colts' tone has changed. Back when Richardson was drafted, the thought was, hey, it's really hard to create 10-play, 80-yard drives in the NFL. The defenses are too good, and you've got to create big plays. You've got to have a guy that can turn, the 80, 10-play, 80-yard drive into 4 plays, 80 yards. And, Richardson, that was the thought with him, is you'll live with Adam Dunn's whiffs as long as he puts a couple in the Ohio River. But, there's been just, combination of the baseball analogies. There haven't been enough foul balls, haven't been enough getting on base at all, probably a few two home runs, and then obviously plenty of strikeouts and, frankly, just a lack of availability there. But now it's like, well, if we can just be more methodical, if we can just be more boring, like Jonathan Taylor's still in his prime, and, we've changed this defensive coordinator, and we've invested in the secondary, and the O-line we feel like still has some pieces. So that's where I feel like the Colts have changed their tune since April 2023. Now, will they, back that up with their actions, and will, the Jones-Richardson competition play out in that manner? We've got another month to see, but I do think from a verbal standpoint, it sounds different.
Kevin Bowen is our guest. You hear him, of course, in the morning with James Boyd and Jeff Rickard on the Fan Morning Show. Been out at Colts camp. Kevin, this is year number what for you in terms of Colts camps?
think it's number 15 that I've covered. Yeah.
So in those 15 years, and you've seen a lot of different storylines and a lot of positions that there was no question who the starter was going to be and battles and et cetera. In your experience, and I'm saying this because I want Colts fans that are listening to give them a barometer here. In your experience in 15 years, into your educated eye, the position that camp most often lends itself towards a false hope is what? In other words, the workouts that they're doing, the reps that they go through, the style that is played in camp lends itself to a guy to have what looks to be a really good camp, and then invariably that guy doesn't end up making the roster because you're like, yeah, you were watching Fool's Gold and what they were working on. Is there a position more often than not that those guys come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if there is a position that, like, annually shows up again and again. I think the caveat I would throw in there, Jake, is, like, the position where on the other side of the ball you're bad at. So, for example, the secondary for the Colts has been porous in recent years. So, like, you sometimes watch Gardner Minshew or even Matt Ryan, you're like, oh, wow, it's not too bad. And then, like, the joint practices show up and you're like, oh, boy, this is not Gus Bradley's defense. So, that I feel like is kind of where you have it. And there's been years where that's been the case, like, oh, wow, the Colts wideouts are making some plays. And then, again, they go face another defense in these joint practices or the preseason games, and you're like, wow, like, they're getting, like, get open. I remember one year that happened with the offensive. Actually, it was a preseason game. They played their starters. I want to say it was Buffalo against Buffalo's second unit, and like the Buffalo second unit just dominated the Colts starters, and that was one of the few years here in the Chris Ballard era where the O-line really struggled. So yeah, I don't know if it's like, I mean, sure, when you get into camp, and especially this first week when you ramp it up, physicality-wise, the O-line, the D-line, maybe it can be a little fool's gold just trying to evaluate those position groups, but yeah, I'd say it mostly depends on, like, wait, are you really good there, or are you good there just because you're actually really bad, whatever.
And how do you know that? When you're watching it, how do you know, when you watch one unit that is prolific, how do you determine whether it's because that unit is prolific or because the other side of it is so inept?
Yeah, I think it's one of the difficult things at camp. There is a little bit of past precedent that I think it's fair to use, especially if the personnel hasn't changed too much. Like, let's take Wednesday. To your point, all the days run together. The first day at camp, the Colts passing offense was awful. Now, if Jake Query was covering day one of training camp in 2007 and the Colts passing offense was awful, you'd probably walk off the practice field at Rose Holman or Anderson or wherever and say, well, yeah, they might have partied too hard in the offseason. That might just be some day one rust.
Right.
Because there's past precedent that they're great. Well, when day one is awful for the 2025 Colts, you walk off the practice field saying, man, that looks like the worst passing offense in the entire NFL. The worst passing offense in the entire NFL. So it's not perfect by any means, trust me. But
okay, well, hang on for Kevin just a second. Put him on hold, Eddie. We'll check back on the connection because one of the final things I wanted to touch on with Kevin was this, and that is what player that we are used to knowing of, or what player that we are used to seeing, or what player that we thought was an automatic for the Colts. Kevin, what player on this roster is a little bit like your cell phone connection in the fact that it feels like it's pretty good, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait a minute, like it's a little bit shaky there, and that surprises me. Is there anybody who has gotten onto a rougher start to this camp than you expected?
Well, I don't think the first 3 days have been good for A.D. Mitchell. I don't know what you think of him. I guess that's still left for others to kind of infer. Certainly they're still really high on him. Last year he proved to be super unreliable on a variety of levels whenever the ball was thrown his way, and in some way, shape, or form I'd probably chalk it up to at least 3 drops or fumbles when the ball has hit his hands so far the first 3 days, and it's not like he's been targeted a ton. Like Tyler Warren, for example, has been targeted, especially these last 2 days, quite a bit, and he's been pretty reliable. So Yeah, the unreliability of A.D. Mitchell I don't think has gone anywhere 3 days into camp. Kicker, we had a kicker duo today. Both of them look shaky. I don't know if people feel super good about that position. The whole cutting of Matt Gay was just kind of odd to me. It was like, I get that he has struggled from 50 and longer, but, like, the dude did not want field goal inside of 50. I know that's not, the money you're paying him for, but I probably would have liked to have seen him compete with Spencer Schrader than some undrafted dude. But nonetheless, yeah, kicker competition. Schrader, I think, was 4 of 6 today, and the other dude, Maddox, was 3 of 5.
Listen, all I know is this. You do not want your NFL franchise to be one that its biggest free agent signing of the last 3 years was a kicker, right?
Well, yeah, especially when the kicker doesn't work out either. So, yeah, no, that's Banner and Lucas Oil for that.
All right, Kevin Bowen is probably right now driving somewhere back from Grand Park in Westfield, and doing so going through a tunnel because the entire area is under construction, and that's why cell phone spotted. Kevin, appreciate it. Have a good weekend, all right?
Yep, thank you.
Kevin Bowen joining us on the program. Interesting stuff there, and I agree with the part about, you don't know. I just keep going back to this point. Yes, you don't know whether if something is really humming along in camp, if that's because that's a unit that's outstanding or because the unit they're going against is really struggling. Those are two things that are you kind of never know. And sometimes maybe you don't know until the regular season begins. I'm foolish enough. There have been times where I remember covering some camps and seeing a player and hearing coaches talk him up. And I started drinking the Kool-Aid. Oh, yeah. I started drinking the Kool-Aid, right? And I'm like, and by the way, is there any – listen, the phrase drinking the Kool-Aid, we all know the origin of that phrase.
Do we?
Yes. But, it wasn't actually Kool-Aid. The marketing folk in the late 70s of Kool-Aid had to have been beside themselves over the fact that they're like, why does no one know that this actually was – I believe it was called – I'm not even going to say the name of the product in case I say it incorrectly. Well, I mean, we just said drink the Kool-Aid. I think it was called Flavorade or Flavorite, something like that was used in Jonestown, and everybody just assumes it's Kool-Aid. So now, like, to say that you are blindly drinking, like, propaganda is you're drinking the Kool-Aid, that seemed like a marketing mishap for the Kool-Aid folk to not get in front of that when that all happened. But I digress. There have been players that you hear all this chatter about. And when you hear, let me give you a tip, a piece of friendly advice. If there's a player that you're not overly familiar with in the NFL, and you hear coaches all of a sudden out of nowhere start talking that guy up, boy, just really fly, and there are buzzwords that are used here. Ready to step up. Flying around making plays, done some really good things, has a good burst. When you start hearing those things out of nowhere, unsolicited from a coach, oftentimes what that means is you are listening to a coach who is talking up a guy that is totally underperforming, but he's trying to get that guy some juice. He's trying to get that guy to buy in. He's hoping that guy hears that he's talking about how much he believes in him. So if they know that a particular player at a particular position is really important to them and they need that player to rise to the occasion, there are two ways to motivate. One of them, clearly, and with some players, this is what you would do. Some of them, the way that you motivate is to say, look, this guy, he better get it in gear. This guy better get it going. This guy's in serious trouble. We need somebody to play at this position, and nobody's jumped up and grabbed that spot. That motivates guys when you do it that way. And another way to motivate them is to, and coaches, coaches have different ways in which they know, and that's what makes a great coach a great coach. A great coach knows that on a 53-man roster, motivation, what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. And I think good leaders know this in any walk of life, any business that you're in. That getting through to gym and accounting may be a completely different technique that Jim responds to than what Marion marketing responds to. And knowing the variation by which you've got to kind of prod people to get the best out of them is part of good leadership. And sometimes when you hear coaches saying, I'll be honest, you guys were, Reynolds is showing a lot of pop here. I mean, he's flying around making plays, and that's a guy that we like what we see in him. We do, and he just has an energy about him that when he steps out on that field, he's got the ability. He puts himself in the right spots. He's flying around. He's prepared. He's got a big opportunity. It's a big opportunity for him, and we're confident that he's going to rise to that opportunity because he knows what's there for him. You can see that and say, okay, well, this guy's playing well. Or oftentimes, if it's like, wait a minute, we didn't ask about that guy, and nobody's noticed that guy, why all of a sudden are they talking up that guy? It is, in fact, sometimes as a last-dish push to get that guy going, and that sometimes is indicator to you that what you're hearing is a player that is not performing well, that is in some jeopardy of losing his spot because he has not reached out and grabbed it. And I think last year, and I know he was a rookie, but there is a part of me last year, there is nobody that the Colts talked up more in camp than A.D. Mitchell. We heard a lot about A.D. Mitchell. Love the wiggle of A.D. Mitchell. Love the burst of A.D. Mitchell. Love the behind-the-ball aspect of A.D. Mitchell. And if Kevin's right, and A.D., you notice you don't hear as much about A.D. Mitchell this year. Is it, hey, we're going to see what this guy can do, and it's a big year for him. I'm saying that, not them. It's a big year for him. If he doesn't get going, if A.D. Mitchell makes this team and doesn't get going by the time the leaves are falling, then you start to really look at it and wonder.
By the time we get your mom's voicemail?
That's exactly right, Eddie. Thank you. My mom will tell you that when the leaves fall and it's raining outside, those wet leaves are a toxic mix, right? The moisture in the leaves, very dangerous. You have to always make sure that you're looking, and they're wonderful to look at. But the wet leaves are dangerous, Eddie. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's an annual event, is it not?
It is.
My mom's voice. Hi, Jake. It's Mom. Every year. By the way, coming up 2 o'clock, John Oreovitz is going to join us. He's got a book coming out about racing in '99. You hear that and you think, what in the world are you talking about? But we will explain when Oreovitz joins us because it is also Brickyard Week, activity Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Yesterday, it was the USAC guys. You heard us mentioning it. It is the All-State 400 coming up on Sunday. On this Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday, which we will have a conversation with you about an hour from now about something when it comes to the heart that you probably were unaware of but need to be aware of. Eddie, you're wearing your Reds shirt. We need to check in on our baseball bet. And there is something that happened last night to me where I looked up and I realized that the baseball bet might be slithering through my fingertips, but at the same time, I'm ready to reach out and grab something with it and find the joy in it. And we'll talk a little baseball, and I'll tell you what that is next.
Hi, Jake. This is Mom calling. I was listening to the weather tonight, and there's going to be a lot of wind and a lot of rain in the next couple of days. So we're at that time of year where the wet leaves are a real hazard. So I want your listeners to know that they need to be careful and watch for the wet leaves when they are driving and when they are walking. The leaves and the rain, they're just a toxic mix, and we have to be on top of it. So have a good day. Bye.
Especially walking, Eddie. Got to be careful when you're walking on the wet leaves, right?
You know, I've got 3 of those.
That, by the way, that just so people know, that voicemail is from like October, but my mom does it each and every year. Although it is raining out right now, right?
I think it is. I've got like 3 of those messages in my archives here.
Do you really?
Yeah.
We've been doing the show together that long. My mom's been doing that annually. That's my mom's thing, man. That's why my mom's, people like my mom more than they like me. That's for sure.
Well,
goes without saying. So last night, speaking of my mom and I actually went out to dinner last night. And
where'd you go?
What's that?
Where'd you go?
Went to the Ale Emporium.
Ooh, did you get the Hermanaki wings?
Shannon met us. No, my mom got, they both got a buffalo chicken wrap.
That's what you got, and that's what they get.
I got a salad.
Oh, okay.
I do like the Hermanaki wings, though. Fabulous.
Mom and Shannon get it right well?
What's that?
Do your mom and Shannon get along well?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what about your mom and Emily Longnecker, your wife?
My mom likes Emily as well, yes.
Okay.
Emily's been to the Thanksgiving. My mom likes her. So I'm sitting there, and yesterday, I think it was yesterday, before I went to dinner with my mom, obviously, I popped in the studio. I had to print something out after the show. This may have been 2 days ago. And right when I walked in, JMV was talking about players historically that after the All-Star break go in a total swoon. Like a player that is an all-star, and then that was the peak of the year, and that was the curse, and everything just fell apart after that. And as I walked in, I was across the hall recording some things. So as I walked in, I wasn't totally hip to what he was talking about and didn't realize when he asked me the question, and I think I brought up like Atlee Hammaker serving up Bo Jackson's home run, and then that kind of was the pinnacle of his, I shouldn't say career. He had some World Series moments, But anyway, then I caught on to the fact that what JMV was talking about was the Detroit Tigers, who at one time were the best team in baseball.
Oh, man.
And got out to an unbelievable start, and it looked like it was going to be the summer of '84 all over again up in Detroit. I've got a couple of buddies already that have gone up there to see them play, and, they're kind of obviously a historic team, but not one that you hear a lot about or think of or whatever else. But, man, they are, and they're still in first by a wide margin. They got an 8-game lead, but what are they, like 1-9 in their last 10? They've lost 4 in a row?
Yeah, they're struggling to put runs up on the board, which is my biggest concern about them entering the season, Jake, is that they had a really good year last year. They made it to the postseason, made it to the American League Championship Series, if I'm not mistaken. But the problem that I had with them is that they were so dependent on their starters and their starters going deep into games and lights out pitching. I didn't know if they had the offense to really play and make a deep postseason run, and that was my big issue with them going into this year again because they didn't do anything different. And Riley Green's having a really good year for them, and that's about it really in terms of offensive numbers.
Okay. I would like to know, and this is what I was thinking of as I was at dinner last night and watching it and looking up with the Detroit Tigers and was sitting there with my mom and Shannon, and I looked up and it hit me. And I want you to tell me, Eddie Garrison. As a matter of fact, you folks can let me know. I'm going to throw this to the audience, a little people's court to the audience here I'm allowing myself to be judged, okay? Thank you, Eddie. So I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan. Going to Kings Island, over there by the log flume, they had that little Reds merchandise stand, and I always wanted a Joe Morgan jersey. The white jerseys with the little V-neck and the sleeves on them. I loved them. And my sister loved Johnny Bench because my sister was a catcher playing softball growing up. And obviously you had Rose and Griffey, the Big Red Machine. And I saw the twilight of the Big Red Machine. Mm-hmm. But like most kids growing up in central Indiana, even to this day, my first experience with Major League Baseball was going to Riverfront Stadium and seeing the Reds. And even though I was seeing more Gary Reedus, Eddie Milner, Paul Householder, I saw the twilight of the Big Red Machine and certainly the reference to the Big Red Machine. So that was my team. And in 90, when I was a senior in high school, they won wire to wire. You know, that group, awesome. And I still am a Reds fan. When Jay Bruce hit the home run, they win. I loved it.
2012.
Went to several games that year. I mean,
and then Marty shaved his head.
Yes, I mean, all in, right? And then the San Francisco Nightmare. So, having said that, in the American League, the Blue Jays were always my American League team. Always liked the Blue Jays. I've given the reasoning before. You know, I got baseball cards signed by a bunch of Blue Jays when I was a kid. I had family friends that lived in Toronto, and I loved those baby blue, powder blue Blue Jay uniforms of the mid-'80s.
Has that changed now to cute fella?
Jesse Barfield, Lloyd Mosby. Well, so here's my question. So then the Blue Jays got away kind of from, you know, the Jesse Barfield, Lloyd Mosby, George Bell, that era. And I was a big fan when they won the World Series with Joe Carter. But then baseball in general just kind of slipped from my main conscience. It was not a sport that was one. I still followed it, obviously, but I wasn't as dialed into it. I don't think the American culture is as dialed into it over the course of the regular season like I was back then. And then, yes, to your point, Eddie, I just realized that the best logo is the cute fella of the Orioles. Hey, root for me. That's what he's saying on the hat.
Although it's not going so well.
It's okay.
This year.
Listen, cute fella is resilient, and he's got a nice nest there in that stadium in Baltimore, okay? But
Camden Yards, yeah.
Camden Yards. And when IndyCar had their race there, and the official Orioles merchandise staff made me a cute fella shirt that said cute fella, and I thought I was close to getting cute fella adopted by Baltimore as the name of the mascot because they just call it the Oriole bird, which is lame. But, you know, only so many trademarks within this noggin, right?
Yeah.
And so my point is this. I've always kind of liked the Athletics because I liked Ricky Henderson when I was a kid, and I just liked the color scheme. And I went out to a game at Oakland Coliseum by myself and during IndyCar one year, and then I went with Henry Woodford and had a good time out there. And so I've always kind of liked the A's. I've always kind of liked the Orioles. Lately, as you know, I have a new tradition where we go once a year to a daytime game to Chicago to see the White Sox, and they are awful. And that's part of the charm of it, is we're there and we're watching this team and there aren't many people there and whatever else. So what I'm getting at is I would like to know in my People's Court question here to the masses, is it terrible that I have like 5 or 6 teams that I root for in baseball in today's era, and I don't necessarily have a quote-unquote favorite team? I'm the first to admit, if the Reds got super hot and went to it, then that nostalgia grasps me and I'm all back in. But I don't sit and watch every Reds game. But I do check the scores with regularity and the standings and where they are of the Athletics, the Orioles, the White Sox, and the Blue Jays. The Mets as well, oddly enough.
The Metropolitans?
Yes, oddly enough. So I'm the first to admit that I'm a little bit of a front runner on whichever of those teams is doing best kind of draws me in for that summer.
You mean a bandwagoner?
A bandwagoner, though, I think is more so whatever team that year is the best, that's who they're a fan of. And then the next, you know, like right now, so a bandwagoner would have been a Tigers fan 2 months ago, and now all of a sudden they're all in on the Blue Jays or Houston or, you know, the Dodgers. But for me, it's more just based on like my experiences within those teams. But there are 5 or 6 that I kind of root for, kind of equally across the board. Does this make me the world's worst baseball fan or the most realistic Reds fan? Which is it? Right? It's one of those two, is it not?
Nice punchline there.
It's true, right? It's one of those two. So I'm kind of, I have a Blue Jays hat that I've had for 30 years. It's got, the stitching is tattered, all of it, right? I have it. So I can prove that I have a long-standing fandom. I have a White Sox bat from Bat Day of 1979. But I'm a Reds guy through and through. But they're just kind of right there. But in terms of our beer bet, Eddie, you took the two teams, the best combined record of the two teams that you selected, the total number of wins. You took the Blue Jays, who are sitting at 61 wins, and the Marlins at 48. So you have a total of 109, right?
Yeah, it helps when you've got the best team in the league.
Listener Chad, well, there are like three of them that are hanging around for that best record, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Actually, the best team in the league right now is Milwaukee, right?
Yeah.
By percentage?
Yeah.
So Chad went with the Reds, not bad, 53 wins. But he partnered them, if I'm not mistaken, with the Rockies. Terrible decision, 26, so he's got 79. He's 30 games behind you. Now, I, on the other hand, went with my heart and not my head. I went with the Athletics at 43, White Sox at 37. I'm sitting at 80. Eddie, it'll be Surfside that I'll be hooking you up with, but I've already given you that once before. Now, see, I love this. Hey, Jake, there's nothing wrong with rooting for multiple teams in baseball, considering especially that we do not have our own franchise here in town.
I agree.
But then that statement is kind of disqualified by the person's exit of the text. Go Yankees. Come on. You're a Yankees fan. You're a bandwagon fan, right?
Yankees just traded for Colorado Rockies third baseman Ryan McMahon, by the way. So not good for Chad, but good for whomever texted you.
By the way, this just in. Do you happen to have the breaking news sounder? Major League Baseball yesterday announcing its Luckiest Man Award. It goes to Ryan McMahon, who is now a member of the New York Yankees after playing for the Colorado Rockies.
Well played.
He is celebrating like there's no tomorrow. The greatest export from west of the Mississippi since Coors Light, which you couldn't get unless it was in a refrigerated truck, as rumor had it in the mid-'80s.
Is it raining outside, Jake? I saw you leave the studio.
Yes.
So that means it's going to be muggy.
Okay, here's the thing. When it's hot like this, and it was hot. I mean, earlier today when I was out at the Colts camp, it was hot. And when it's hot like that, you walk out and it's, but then it rains like this, and after it gets done raining and the temperature doesn't go down, and now all of a sudden the entire world feels like the steam coming off of asphalt, then it turns into this. Gah. That's what it's going to be like outside in about 20 minutes. No bueno. No thanks.
I feel bad for the people at IMS that have to sit through this, and the drivers. Oof.
Man, it is. I mean, it is hot. Yeah, it's rough. So certainly if you're out there or on your way out, be careful. And, it does sound like a cliche to be sure to hydrate, but you definitely want to do that.
IndyCar races this weekend too, right, Jake?
Monterey, Laguna Seca. That is the call that I will be on. Indy Next and IndyCar both this weekend.
Are we still in the mindset that Polo is without question going to win the series, or is Pato starting to, raise eyebrows like, maybe?
Polo is at the point now. I remember asking Alex Palou a couple of races ago. I'm trying to think of where we were. It might have been at Gateway, whether or not he starts to consider, like with qualifying, if he didn't have a good qualifying run, what does he do throughout the course of a race, and does he consider the championship in mind, whether or not to be aggressive or not? And at that time, he was like, no, I'm still under the mindset that I'm going for every win. I think Palou has put himself in position now where his point advantage is comfortable enough over Pato O'Ward that Palou knows that so long as Palou does not have a disastrous weekend, that the margin is going to be too much. So I think Palou goes into the weekends, Eddie, thinking to himself, I've just got to go out and bring the car home safely, like say a top 6 each and every race, and then it's going to be difficult for anybody to catch me.
99-point lead over Pato right now.
And Kyle Kirkwood is how far back?
173. Dixon 174.
Yeah, so that's, Kirkwood has really faded here in the last couple of races because he was our buddy, Chiefs fan Steve, Kansas City Steve.
Mm-hmm.
He asked me at the beginning of the year, he said, you know what? I want to start doing IndyCar. I want to become a fan. And I said, okay. And so I said to him, because I know he's a football fan, yep, I made a list of quarterbacks in the NFL and what quarterback I thought each driver was.
Oh, really?
So that it gave Steve a good idea of who he was rooting for.
Did you give Palou as Patrick Mahomes?
And so I think I did put Palou as Mahomes, yes. Dixon, I can't remember exactly who I put for each one of them. I would not put anybody as Aaron Rodgers because I think Aaron Rodgers at this point is washed.
Right.
I can't remember who I put down for Dixon, but I did like 6 or 7 of them. And he picked Kirkwood. I don't even remember which quarterback I said for Kirkwood, but he picked Kyle Kirkwood, and that's his guy, and he's watched every race and was super excited until a couple weeks ago. And Kirkwood's kind of been brought back down to life a little bit.
Baker Mayfield?
Baker Mayfield, I would say, is more like Renus VK.
Really?
Where Renus VK, Baker Mayfield started out, with a lot of hype and expectation, as did Renus VK as a young driver with a very good seat. And then kind of hit a point where people were like, yeah, does there need to be a change here? Goes to a new team and has found new life with it and is showing like, whoa, wait a minute, there was something still there.
Yeah.
And that's what VK has been able to do with Dale Coyne. Rinus VK is a really good driver.
I'm glad you brought him up because there's a lot of, speculation about the future of Will Power with Team Penske. Is that a realistic option?
I think when that happens, at this point, unless he turns it down, David Malukas will get that ride. So what happened with Penske is Team Penske began a technical alliance with AJ Foyt Racing.
Yep.
And so, therefore, when David Malukas came over to AJ Foyt, the thought process by just about everybody was that was essentially a Penske in waiting contract, and that Malukas then will get Will Power's ride when Will Power at the end of the year moves on from Team Penske, that Malukas would be that guy. If it was not, if for some reason that fell through, I think VK, that's a realistic discussion or possibility to be had, but I think it's going to be Malukas. Now, the other one is whenever Dixon decides to retire, who gets that number 9 ride? Because that's a preeminent ride in teams with Alex Palou.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that wouldn't end up being Joseph Newgarden.
Really?
A couple of years down the road. I mean, there's no reason to believe that that's imminent right now. But you wonder, when Newgarden's contract's up, no Tim Cindric there, does he look to go elsewhere as well? It's been a tough year for him, really tough year. Sometimes not even necessarily entirely his fault. Last race had no one's fault on Penske or Newgarden, either one. Just a tough break, plain and simple. It's a Friday, Good for the Heart Friday. We'll do that coming up in about 35 minutes. We'll also talk a little racing with John Oreovitz in about 15. But when we come back, what's happening at Colts camp today? What jumped out and who is looking good and who is looking like still they're hitting the snooze button on the alarm for training camp? We will answer those questions next. Indianapolis Motor Speedway right now due to lightning in the area. Obviously, if you were in the Indianapolis area, you know that it is, I mean, it's not like downpouring. At least it wasn't last I checked, but it's, there's moisture on the racetrack. I don't need a raincoat. One of my favorite Tom Carnegie moments.
Tom Carnegie.
He was doing practice one day, and there was just like very light precipitation. And he was on the fruit stand. Caution on the racetrack. Moisture on the race course. Slight pause. I don't need a expletive raincoat. All over the PA. Tom Carnegie, legend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Colts camp week number 1. Technically, I guess you wouldn't say week number 1 because they didn't start on Monday. But another practice is in the books. And yes, it has been very, very warm. But I don't think that there's anything necessarily per se that jumps out at you. This is the Anthony Richardson saga, situation, storyline, etc. To me is fascinating. And the reason why is because, and I go back to, I talk about precedent a lot, right? And by the way, I'm now told Indianapolis Motor Speedway, done for the day. Done for the day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The thing about Richardson, he's kind of like, and I know I'm going on the way back here, but it is a lot like Jonathan Bender when he was a pacer. Now, Bender's more was injury, but when Jonathan Bender, and you've heard, I mean, we talked to Isaiah Thomas about it, we've talked to Austin Crozier about it, Bender would do things in practice that you would say to yourself, I've never seen a 7'1" guy do this. This was pre-Durant. Taking the ball on the wing, making one dribble, and then taking one step and dunking. Stepping back and hitting a pull-up 3. Driving on the baseline and doing a Dr. J level behind the backboard arm swoop, but then finishing with a dunk. Those were things that, when you saw them, the inability to stay on the court, the inability to have consistency when he did play, you kept pushing through to it because you knew that that was there somewhere. And it's not unlike I've always said, we all have this, everyone, male or female. You have that one person that was so out of your league but gave you time of day that every 5th time you made plans with them, they actually followed through, and every 8 times you called them on the phone, they actually answered. But you totally sacrificed and threw away your dignity in pursuit of it because it was so out of your league and it was so awesome when you were around them that you kept going back to the well. Everybody's had that. Everybody, right? You just hope in the case of myself that that's actually the one you end up landing. But either way, with Richardson, I think the big-time play, the home run play, the 565-foot shot to right field, that's what captivates you, and that's why the Colts keep going back to this well, even though he has not been able to stay healthy, and when he has been healthy, he's not been able to be consistent. And I saw it again today. But what I saw today when I was out there was the Colts saying, you know what? I know that this is an open competition between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. But they're going to continue to work with Richardson because you think about the falling off the back foot 65-foot pass in the air, or the tuck of the football, the drive against the Jets, where he's making every right decision and instinct, and once he gets rolling, he turns a 3-yard play into a 12-yard play like every single time. Okay? And so that glimpse you keep going back to and hoping it happens. And that's why Anthony Richardson is right now in a quarterback battle in a situation where, given the body of work, if Anthony Richardson and his career for the last 2 years had come without that one play against, I think it was Houston where he goes 65 yards, without that one drive against the Jets, and if he had been a 3rd-round draft pick or a free agent acquisition, if he's Josh Freeman, then there's no way that he gets this level of time and look. But I think they're trying to do everything they can to make it work with Richardson for all of the reasons I just explained. And the reason why I think they're trying to make it work, and the reason why I still truly believe, even though I think Daniel Jones is going to be the day one starter, I truly believe it's going to be not because Daniel Jones won the job, but because Anthony Richardson lost it. Because I think Daniel Jones is their default. I think they want Anthony Richardson to win that job. I think they need Anthony Richardson to win that job. But if he doesn't, then instead of dilly-dallying around with it, they're eventually going to say, okay, the last thing that Anthony Richardson has yet to do for us to motivate him is have a legitimate guy long-term that could take his position and take the keys from him. Because when he got here, right when he came out of the NFL womb, he was handed the keys to the kingdom. And then we found out that he didn't fully understand all that goes into being a quarterback in the NFL. So all of a sudden one day we get this word that, like, guess what? He is going to sit on the sidelines and others are going to play before him. Okay? And Joe Flacco is going to come in, and Joe Flacco is going to be the guy. But Anthony Richardson's looking at it, and he's going, Joe Flacco is 2 years away from replacing Joe Namath on insurance commercials during episodes of The Golden Girls. That guy ain't taking my job long term. And other players that were brought in, he's going, that's not a threat. And I don't think Richardson's a bad, malicious guy like that, but they didn't truly threaten his job. Now you have a guy with a one-year deal in Daniel Jones that Anthony Richardson has to look at and say, whoa, wait a minute. And if that doesn't wake him up, then you know that you have tried everything. But what I saw today when I got out there was Anthony Richardson doing drills, throwing over the middle to Tyler Warren. 2 steps back, boom, quick release, across the middle, the layups. And what did every coach tell you when you played basketball and you weren't hitting your shots? When you were in the driveway playing 21 with your buddies or around the world and nothing was going down, what did you do? In that moment, you got yourself to the free throw line. You're playing horse with somebody. You try, first off, to land a couple of Steph Curry shots to get yourself out to an early lead, and nothing's fallen. Eventually, you say, you know what, I'm just going to go to the free throw line and just hit a couple of free throws and get in rhythm. Steph Curry has a game. Tyrese Halliburton has a game where he's not shooting the ball well. What's the thing you never want for that player? To get to the free throw line, to get in rhythm. Because then everything opens up. And the Colts right now are putting Anthony Richardson on the free throw line. They are saying, we know you can hit the home run. We know you can tuck and run. But you have to be able to play mid-range game to be a quarterback in the National Football League. And we've tried everything else. We've tried to send the message. You did the tap out and got benched again. You've been injured and lost critical time as a rookie. But now we have a guy that, yes, nobody is thinking that Daniel Jones is going to come in here and automatically be Andrew Luck. But it could be Sam Darnold. And he could come in here and play well, and then it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Now he is a free agent at the end of the year. Do the Colts then say to Anthony Richardson, we've had a great time, we appreciate it, we're moving on? I don't think you can rule that out. But I think they want to give, because they know ceiling Anthony Richardson is higher than the ceiling of Daniel Jones. And they're going to give, this is the last push, but they're going to give him every opportunity to seize it. Kevin Bowen joined us earlier. We talked about Tyler Warren getting a lot of reps at the tight end position. Jelani Woods was on field, not necessarily jumping out. They have been patient with him as well. And we'll see whether or not he gets now, if he is healthy and able to stay healthy, is he going to get the year to show what he can do? Or is this, okay, we waited and we were patient, we wanted to see what would happen, and now we have seen enough, and unfortunately what we are seeing in that enough is not quite enough, and so therefore we're going elsewhere. Defensively, I thought it was interesting when we talked to Cam Binham, and we talked yesterday about the fact that Lou Anarumo, it's difficult to know whether or not the Colts are going to be a straight-up man defense or are they going to be a zone defense. Cam Binham said he kind of prefers the zone, but Cam Binham, in coming from the defense he's coming from under Brian Flores in Minnesota, they do a disguised defense. They do that same kind of defense that it is designed to keep the offense guessing. And I thought it was interesting that he, talking about Cam Binham, he mentioned the fact that they are not yet into the scheme. They have not even gotten into long division defensively with this defense. So it's hard to know. Zaire Franklin was out there today working out, trying to get that ankle going a little bit. He's not going to go on PUP. But it's hard to know if you look defensively at players for the Colts and who is standing out defensively. You can't read a lot into that yet because Cam Binham told us, like, look, this isn't really anything in depth of what exactly we're going to be. We are still learning addition and subtraction and haven't even got into long division, let alone algebra, defensively. But we do know that whatever defense they end up going up with, and whether they go with man or whether they go with zone, what we know is that the Colts are going to be a defense that the quarterback of the opposing team, when he gets to the line, is going to see formation that does not in any way, shape, or form represent what it is once the ball is snapped. And that's become a more in vogue way of defenses doing things in the NFL. But I think it means and necessitates for more versatility defensively and guys that are very instinctive with their vision of knowing when and where they need to be. And Bynum is an important part of that, and it is a reason why you give a guy a 4-year, $60 million deal as kind of the last line of defense back there, quarterback, but eyes of your defense looking over everything and letting people know where to go. But other than that, there hasn't been a whole lot that has jumped out at camp. We don't have major storylines of Jonathan Taylor from a couple years ago. Sure, yesterday, Bernhard Raimann, that got some attention. When Bernhard Raimann comes out and says, we're not on the same page, and I thought the most telling thing that he said, and I thought it was a masterful and a smart thing that he said, when Bernhard Raimann comes out and says, my agent knows the value of the position, and I know the value of the position, but we don't know if the team knows the value of the position, meaning his position of left tackle. That, to me, was his way of saying, you know, yeah, like I thought it was good gamesmanship for negotiation for Bernhard Raimann yesterday. Smart. It was smart. And yeah, Alec Pierce the day before was a little more coy, but Alec Pierce is in a little bit different situation because he doesn't have the leverage that Raimann has. Bernhard Raimann's got leverage. He's got leverage. Wide receivers, hate to say it, love him. And Alec Pierce is a really good player. He's a really good player. But he's also Levi's 501. You can go to TJ Maxx. I got them all over the place. Left tackle, you got to go to a specialty store. And they're only open on Sundays from 12 to 4. That's it. Harder to find. Not a lot of them. And Raimann knows that, and the Colts have to know that. So if I'm Raimann, I'm automatically playing the, gosh, I'm still waiting to see what I'm worth, hoping that the Colts come in and swoop in and make a big offer. Whereas Alec Pierce, the Colts know, we can keep him guessing a little bit, find out where we are, find out how we got what we have left over, and that's no knock on Alec Pierce, who I think is a good player. But he also is a more fungible position than is left tackle. I mean, that is the simple reality of that situation. But so far, it's been a camp where the storyline has been the heat. That's it. That's not a bad thing. And I've made it this far. Friday, 40 minutes before the end of the week, before I've gone on any sort of a rant about how weird it is that they're practicing 1 hour a day and they're only 3 days into it and veterans are already getting rest days. I haven't even gone there. It's the lazy narrative, right? I'm a harder working guy than that. Come up with storylines besides the obvious, which is, yeah, it's kind of weird, right? It's kind of weird that, like, we are An hour, and I get it. I get in the morning while you're doing the 1 hour practices, but my goodness. Yeah, but back in my day, Coach Bryant had the kids out there 2 a days in the middle of the afternoon. Yeah, okay. And the Colts have been a team that has had a lot of injury and they have struggled with injuries. And so therefore you know, is this part of the strategy again of keeping them healthier? I mean, you know, it seems, Eddie, you tell me, does it seem odd to you? Am I just like an old guy, or does it seem weird that they literally are doing 1 hour and that's it, a day?
I mean, you are an old guy, Jake. I'm just kidding. That's how it's always been, though. I feel like they're doing 4 consecutive practices as well. Like, they didn't do that at all last year. They did an hour each day. They went an hour 15 today, and I don't know what tomorrow will entail. They'll practice tomorrow afternoon, I believe at 4 o'clock. I don't know if the pads will come on for tomorrow's practice or not, or if that'll be next week, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary for them to only have an hour. Most teams are only practicing for an hour, hour 15. They're not going hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hours anymore.
It's weird, right?
And I think that's more so of things that have gone on between contractual talks and CBA agreements between the NFL and the Players Association and, you know, all the health people that have been included in these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I was just surprised yesterday when I heard that I think it was Tyquan Lewis, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Braden Smith with the rest day. I totally understand it. And those are guys that I get it. Those are guys that I get it. They, you know, what possible things are you going to need to go over for DeForest Buckner? I totally understand it. And you know what? We pre-taped something so I could get back here in studio today because it was going to be so hot. So I guess, you know, I do get it. It was surprising to me. Joining us now on the program, longtime friend of the show. He has been on with us, obviously, before. He also is an accomplished writer and author who covers motorsports this weekend, a big weekend in motorsports. You got a lot going on here in Indianapolis between the Brickyard 400, between IndyCar taking place out in Laguna Seca. And in addition to that, it has been 26 years, hard to believe that, since one of the great rookie classes that we have seen in open-wheel racing. And John Oreovitz joining me now on the program to talk about his book, Class of 99, that had both triumph and tragedy within that class. The book is now out and ready to go, right, John?
More or less. We officially announced it today. It'll ship probably 6-8 weeks from now.
Okay. So, but you have finished the writing of it is what I'm getting at, right? And you've colored in all the pictures too, right?
Yeah, the hard work's done. It's just a matter of talking about it and hoping it generates interest among the IndyCar fans.
Give me the drivers that you featured in this that were rookie members of what was then CART in 1999.
Well, of this group, the only rookie that I focus on is Juan Montoya. Cristiano D'Amata, who later went on to be a champion in the CART series and drove in Formula One, was also a rookie in 99. But Montoya actually won the championship that year in a tie with Dario Franchitti. And so the group I focus on, they all broke in between 96 and 99. But the focus of the book is the 99 season, which, you know, as I said, Franchitti and Montoya tied for the championship. Greg Moore was, you know, a rising star in IndyCar racing and, you know, expected to be a giant star of the future, and he got killed in the last race. And you know, a younger guy called Gonzalo Rodriguez also died that year at Laguna Seca. But what was most notable was it really launched this generation that I compare to the greatest generation of Mario and AJ and the Unsers. I think if you look at Elio Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, Juan Montoya, Dario Franchitti, Greg Moore, collectively, they carried IndyCar racing for 20 years or more the same way that Mario and AJ and those guys did. And so it really celebrates that generation. And the way Greg Moore brought them all together as friends. If you talk to AJ or Mario or Bobby Unser about race drivers being friends, you know, it was not the case back in the day. But Greg had a contagious spirit that really brought these guys together and learned that they could trust each other and be friends.
You know, one of the things that to me is interesting, Oreo, is the fact that, and I think people lose sight of this, if you look at the biggest superstars of motorsports, and certainly from an Indianapolis 500 standpoint, Bobby Unser, Al Unser, Dan Gurney for that matter, but Mario Andretti, Bobby Rahal, Emerson Fittipaldi, Tom Sneva, Gordon Johncock, Rick Mears, all of them. As great as that era was, and as great as the rivalries and the competition and the battles were, the reality is that those drivers all, for the most part, with rare exception, they all retired within about a 5-year period of one another. And then all of a sudden, almost seemingly in the bat of an eye, I mean, the split was the split as well, but you now had all at one time. There wasn't the slow immersion that you get now, right? If you look now at Scott Dixon or Tony Kanaan or Dario Franchitti, they were able to race on the track against those, Alexander Rossi and, Rinus VK and whoever you consider, Joseph Newgarden, the next rising star. There was interblend with them. How difficult was it for this particular group you're talking about to kind of just take over that handle of the torch without any sort of real immersion between the group before them and then their stardom?
Well, I think there was kind of a lost generation because, what I consider the greatest generation, you think of them in terms of the 70s, AJ Mario and the Unsers and those guys. The guys that came to fore in the 80s, Michael Andretti, Al Unser Jr., Ray Hall, Emerson, I don't think they resonated the same way, and their careers weren't as long and as established as the generation before them. And somehow the 80s generation kind of got lost. And it wasn't until these younger guys broke through at the end of the 90s, and they did so despite the backdrop of the CART IRL split. CART in 1999 was still pretty strong. But at the same time, as Mario Andretti says in my book, these guys, because of the politics and the focus on the politics of the era, they never got the recognition they deserved. And I think that goes in some ways toward the guys in the 80s, too, because the 1979 split never really ended. There was always a cloud over the CART series, no matter how successful it was in the 80s, because of conflict with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
John, when you were writing this book and you were talking to, let's start with Greg Moore, because he's a centerpiece of the story of that season of 99. I know Montoya was the champion, but Moore truly was not only a rising star, but to your point, was involved in a terrible accident that was a fatal accident at California Speedway to end that season. Did you get a chance to go back and talk to, those that worked within the team that Greg Moore was with, other than just the drivers that he was competing against? Were there those that you were able to talk to because of this book that taught you even more about Greg Moore that you didn't know?
Yeah, I spent some time talking to one of Greg's best friends, a guy called Al Robbie, who still lives out in the Vancouver area. And he was there at Fontana, and he, accompanied Greg to a lot of Greg's races between, say, 1995 and 1999. Another one was Patrick Carpentier, who was Greg's teammate at the time. And it was, it was really chilling to hear Patrick's, response to, what was happening within the team as this day unfolded, Halloween 1999 at California Speedway. Dave Popolars, who was a crew member for Franchitti at the time. He's the head of restoration for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum now. He gave some really great insight. And of course, even guys like Tony Kanaan. I mean, those guys didn't learn one of their best friends died until they pulled into the pits at the end of that race. Tony said he saw them put the flags down to half staff in the middle of the race, which they did. And he knew. And he says, when they put the flags to half mast, that's a world thing. It means somebody died. And so imagine you're halfway through a 500-mile race, and you make the connection that one of your best buddies just died. I mean, the things these guys went through back in the day, it's hard to fathom.
How much did Greg Moore carry them? And I don't mean that to sound cheesy or over romanticize it, but I've noticed it in my coverage of racing and being around it. I think it's genuine just how much Greg Moore continued to drive, pardon the pun, and motivate Dario and Kanaan, and probably Elio as well, even though there was an odd tie-in with Elio contractually moving forward. But how much do you think Greg Moore and the spirit of Greg Moore continued to band that group together even when Greg Moore physically wasn't around them?
I think it was very powerful, and it extended to later generations of racers, most famously James Hinchcliffe. Max Pappas, created the phrase red gloves rule because Greg Moore used to say, red gloves make you a superhero, and he always wore red gloves. Max, after he won his first race, ironically, it was the first race of 2000. He said red gloves rule into his radio, and James Hinchcliffe has picked up on that. James Hinchcliffe, of course, another great Canadian racer. Hinchcliffe, very memorably, wore red gloves, and I believe actually carried a pair of Greg's gloves with him during his pole run at Indianapolis a few years ago. So he had the only guy I can compare him to on a world stage is Gilles Villeneuve, the Formula One driver, who, again, he wasn't a champion. He won 5 or 6 races for Ferrari.
Father of Jacques Villeneuve, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Gilles Villeneuve was killed in 1982, and he held the same kind of aura, just, this fascination that never went away among fans, drivers, anybody.
John, when you look, John Oreovitz is our guest, and again, his book, we will get you all the information coming up in just a second about the season of 99 in-kart. Juan Montoya was the champion that year. What motivated you? You've been around it a long time, John. You've seen a lot of great, classes. You've seen a lot of great seasons. You've seen a lot of great drivers. What made you decide, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this book because this is the story that needs to be told?
Well, as I think about it, I followed IndyCar racing since the late 70s and, really became a super fan in the 80s and started covering it in the early 90s. And in all my experience, the 99 kart season, it's just the most compelling single season of IndyCar I ever saw. It just had it all. It had these young guys. It had, the old guard, Michael and Al Jr. on their way out. It had, the tragedies, which you hate, but it's a part of sport, a part of racing that is part of its allure. But it was an important year for me, too. I had spent the past 2 years working public relations for PacWest Racing, and I decided that I would rather be on the media side. I had no prospects going into 99, but I ended up coming out of it okay. The main thing was I got a job working for Quokka Sports, who ran Kart's website at the time. In fact, Pam Miller, who's the producer of Fox IndyCar coverage now, was the producer of the website then. And so, in some ways, I was trying to establish myself the same way those guys were. And, the fact that it was concurrent with this remarkable season, it was just it was a privilege to be there. And it's a reminder when you look back just how great IndyCar racing was and hopefully can be again.
Doesn't seem like long ago, that's for certain, but it was 26 years ago. Class of 99, Triumph and Tragedy in the 1999 Kart IndyCar Series from John Oreovitz, who, of course, has written several books when it comes to racing, notably about the split itself and everything that took place with that. This is the latest Class of 99, available Amazon and where else at this point, Oreo?
OctanePress.com is the publisher. And I'm sure that if you just reach out to me via social media, especially if you're here locally and want to get a signed copy, I'm glad to help you out. We should have books late September, 1st of October.
All right, appreciate it, Oreo. Talk to you soon. Octane Press, by the way, again, the publisher and website as well. John, appreciate it, as always.
Thanks, Jake. Take care.
John Oreovitz joining us on the program. It's a Friday. It's the bottom of the hour. You know what that means. It is time for a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart story, and this one is one of the monthly interviews that we do to get you caught up on something that is oh so important. Let me tell you a text that I got earlier today. Literally earlier today, somebody sent me a text saying, Jake, I wanted to let you know the importance of a heart scan because I thought I was healthy, went in and got a heart scan, and then found out that, in fact, I did have blockage that made it necessary for me to go on to cholesterol medication and get a stent. The heart scan was oh so important, just $49. And I am very grateful for the opportunity from Franciscan to talk about cardiovascular health. And we're going to do that just a couple minutes on the other side. It's a Friday. It's the bottom of the hour. You know what that means. It is time for a Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. And we do this occasionally where we step aside from telling you a feel-good story in terms of the world of sports, and a story that we hope will help you feel good in terms of your heart health. And again, a reminder, Franciscan, I'll get you all the information, just $49 for a heart scan, which is the most important thing to do in the first step towards cardiovascular health. It is not invasive. It is oh so simple, and just $49. You can self-refer, pay out of pocket. You get a heart health risk assessment with it as well, and all from Franciscan. That is number one from multiple places throughout Indiana when it comes to cardiovascular care. Multiple scores of number one in the state of Indiana for Franciscan Health. And joining me now on the program, Dr. Adam Hicks is a board-certified vascular surgeon at Franciscan, and we're here to talk about PAD. Now, when J&B is on the radio, PAD means pad time. That means extra time to talk about whatever. But in this case, it's more important than that. It's peripheral arterial disease. And I can tiptoe my way through saying that, Dr. Adam Hicks, but I have no idea exactly what it means. So welcome to the program. I appreciate the time. And can you tell me more about PAD?
Yes, so peripheral arterial disease simply means blockages in the arterial flow. Typically, when we talk about it, we're discussing the legs. So similarly to how a heart can have blockages in its arteries that can cause a heart attack, peripheral arterial disease can have blockages in the arteries that lead down to your legs and feet, which can lead to a symptom called claudication, which is kind of cramping in the calf with walking, as well as the development of wounds, and if not treated appropriately, can ultimately lead to amputation, which is obviously an outcome we're trying to avoid. So that's why it's important to get screened and have a good understanding of what your cardiovascular health is.
If you go with Dr. Hicks, and again, this will show why I talk about ball scores and you're a doctor, right, with the neophyte level with which this question is going to come. But when you talk about something like this and the arterial disease and the issue, say, in the legs, is it more often that issue can then lead to heart disease, or is this actually a byproduct and a symptom of the fact that heart disease is already consistent or visible within the patient?
Yeah, so heart disease and peripheral arterial disease are kind of one and the same thing, because ultimately when we say heart disease, we typically are talking about the blood vessels that are feeding the heart. Similarly, peripheral arterial disease, we're talking about the blood vessels that feed down to the legs. And so certain lifestyle choices such as obesity, smoking, diabetes, high cholesterol and high blood pressure, all of these things kind of combine to cause both heart disease, but maybe the lesser known thing is that it has that same effect on the arteries throughout the body, which can lead to peripheral arterial disease. So most of our patients with peripheral arterial disease, we just presume also will have a component of cardiovascular disease or heart disease as well. So it's essentially the same process. It's just affecting arteries in different locations.
When you look at this particular issue, Dr. Adam Hicks is my guest. He's a board-certified vascular surgeon with Franciscan Health, and we're talking about peripheral arterial disease. Are there signs and symptoms for somebody that, is there a particular age range in which this begins to show itself, and what would the signs or symptoms be?
Yeah, so most people will begin showing symptoms as early as their fifth or sixth decade of life. So anybody, 60 to 70 years or older is kind of the typical age range where we begin to see symptoms. Most commonly, the first symptom is because there's not enough blood flow getting down to the muscles in the foot and calf, people will get cramping, kind of like a Charlie horse in the calf, when they start walking long distances. And they'll notice that they cannot walk as far over time. And then as the disease advances, people can develop wounds on the feet too, is another symptom that we'll frequently see.
And would someone just go to, Dr. Hicks, their everyday, let's say, for example, that you go to your general practitioner and then this is discovered, would you go into just simple cardiology with that, or is there a specific area and focus of a doctor that one would see, a specialist that one would see for it?
Yeah, so this is a great thing to bring up with your primary care doctor. They'll know exactly what test to order. Fortunately, it's a very straightforward, simple test that they can order. It's just an ultrasound. So there's no radiation or anything else associated with it. It's usually a pretty quick test, under 15 minutes or so, and any general practitioner should be able to order that. The disease process itself is typically managed, by vascular surgeons, but also sometimes will be managed by cardiologists and some other specialties as well. But any general practitioner will be able to get arterial ultrasounds of the legs and get a good baseline for what the blood flow to the legs looks like if you're having any symptoms.
What is something someone can do to be preventative to make sure that this is not something that they encounter?
Yes. So even though it's a little bit counterintuitive, because the folks who have peripheral arterial disease will have cramping when they walk, actually exercising and walking is one of the best things that you can do. That's great for your cardiovascular health, but it also helps improve the flow in the arterial blood vessels that are still open and patent. Additionally, avoidance of tobacco products, so no smoking, and then adherence to your other medical issues such as keeping your blood pressure low, being on cholesterol-lowering medications, a healthy diet. All of those things are very helpful in preventing PAD.
Dr. Adam Hicks is our guest. We're talking about, he is a board-certified, by the way, vascular surgeon at Franciscan Health. We're talking about PAD. So let's just go through one of my hypotheticals. We'll take a guy named John, okay? So John goes in. He goes to his general doctor. This is discovered for John. The overall then, I guess, roadmap, the next month or two for John in terms of treatment and the therapy and the things that he would go through moving forward would be what?
Yes. So the first thing I do is just get a general sense for how severe the disease is, which typically can be accomplished with just one of those ultrasound tests. But also my physical exam is an important part of the process. So I always make sure to look at the feet, listen to the pulses, and take a feel of the blood pressure in the feet and all of those things. So I take those factors. And most patients, in the absence of severe pain or a wound, they will not require a surgical intervention, but rather we treat with different medication adjustments, walking program, and obviously trying to abstain from tobacco use. So we typically will put them on kind of a monitoring program where we try and optimize those medical things that we can. Most of the patients who are identified to have PAD can be managed medically, but there are a small subset of patients who will progress to worsening PAD and may potentially need interventions. Oftentimes those can be done with minimally invasive approaches, kind of like a heart catheterization. It's similar, and we do essentially a leg catheterization and can take pictures of the blood vessels in the leg. But fortunately, most people can be managed medically and will not need, an invasive procedure. And then even a smaller subset of patients may need open surgery bypasses.
Dr. Adam Hicks, board-certified vascular surgeon with Franciscan Health. And again, doctor, $49 heart scan. There's no reason for people to not get it, right? I've been preaching this forever, and I think you probably agree.
Yes, absolutely.
Doctor, I appreciate the time. I know you're the pride of Cathedral High School, the Dayton Flyers as well, and Indiana University in terms of the School of Medicine. I certainly appreciate the time, and we look forward next time that we have another area that we need to explore, that we have you back on the program.
Yeah, I would love to come back and chat some more.
Appreciate it. Dr. Adam Hicks, board-certified vascular surgeon from Franciscan Health. Your big plans, Eddie, for the weekend would be what?
I'm not entirely sure, Jake. Not sure yet. I may go out to Grand Park tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure what the plans are yet. I need to talk to Olivia to see if she wants to do anything. I know she's been mentioning about wanting to get to a pool and hang out at Lazy River at some point. So maybe this weekend. How about you? I know you've got IndyCar.
IndyCar, indeed, correct. Laguna Seca, Monterey, California, which will be fun this weekend. Obviously, the Brickyard taking place as well, but I will be on the IndyCar side of things. We do kind of split crews for that. Nick and Michael will be with the
Nick Yeoman
guys
and Michael
from,
Young.
Correct. They will be with the PRN guys doing the Brickyard, and then Mark Janes, myself, will be on the IndyCar side doing Monterey. I'm looking at the camp schedule for the Colts for practice days upcoming. They have, what is today's date? Today is the 25th, correct?
Yes, sir. They have one tomorrow at, I think, 4.
Tomorrow practice is from 4 until 5:30. That is correct. Then the 28th, that is Monday. Practice from 10 until 11:15. The 29th, Tuesday, 10 until 11:30 for practice for the Colts, as that is the lineup for the next couple of days. Keep in mind, on the back half of their training camp schedule is when they start to do the joint practices that take place. And they have, obviously a busy weekend as well. Those joint practices that take place, I believe that is, the 11th and 14th? Is that right?
So they only have one at Grand Park, and that's just on the 14th with the Packers.
Okay.
They have one with the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore on that leading up to the first preseason game.
So busy weekend, though, for everybody involved, and look forward to being able to talk about all of it on Monday. Thanks again to Cam Binham. I thought he was outstanding.
That energy, man.
Totally. Really nice guy, Cam Binham, for the Colts. That podcast will be available in podcast form, 1075thefan.com, where you can hear that. And
how about Cam hyping us up a little bit, Jake, or at least you, in terms of your profession?
Yeah, he said actually that he thought it would be hard, because I said, man, you've got a natural broadcasting career in front of you, because he's very energetic. I thought, really explained things well, and he said I wouldn't be able to talk for 3 hours. So wait, so are you saying that our job is difficult? And he said your job is harder than mine.
I wonder how he knew we did a 3-hour show.
I think I might have said, you're right. He's the one that volunteered that, right?
Yeah.
He volunteered that information. But he was super cool, and I thought offered really good perspective. And in particular, he's one of those guys that you look at and you go, okay, they signed him for 4 years and $60 million. And then when you see him and you're around it, you see why. I mean, there is a leadership aspect there. There is a football IQ aspect there, just IQ in general. I mean, being able to go to the Philippines and teach about football, just really good guy. So Cam Binham, that is available on the podcast. John's up next. We'll be back with you at noon on Monday. I thank you for listening to Query & Company.